Ben Reilly's had it rough the past 5 years, living his life in exile, only to be brought back to New York. But after the latest revelation regarding his identity, things have gotten even crazier. Between his status as the real Peter Parker, Pete and MJ moving away, his mentor trapped in cyberspace, Jackal Queens, and Cyber Scarlet Spider, will he rise above it all, or crack under the weight? Welcome to a clone-centric episode of The Forgotten Era, where we follow the adventures of the one true Spider-Man. Hello everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Forgotten Era podcast. My name is Ethan. I'm solo again today, so I'm solo hosting the pod. As you can tell by the intro, we're doing something a little bit different today. It's going to be a Ben Reilly episode. I thought it would be really cool to make a Ben Reilly version of our intro, just in case we want to do something like this, where if there's a little bit of time, and there's not really anything we want to cover specifically, we can just pull out an old Ben Reilly book and go over it, just because that's the era leading up to what we're covering on the show, and it's also my favorite era of Spider-Man, one of Matt's favorites as well. We're both huge Ben Reilly fans and huge Clone Saga people, so it's nice to have options. Today is also the 2nd of December, as I'm recording, and we are going to be covering the Spider-Man Holiday Special from 1995 as a celebration. Because what better way to celebrate Christmas time than to read a Spider-Man Christmas comic? I can't think of anything better. A little bit of background about this particular book. It was published on December 14th of 1995, which was only about a month into Ben's time as Spider-Man in publication. He was given the mantle in November of that year, and then they had the Return of Spider-Man month books after they did the Scarlet Spider months. And then after that, we had the beginning of Media Blizzard, which this was a week after that. So they're very intertwined. This particular book is broken into 4 short stories. Today we're just going to be covering 2 of them, the 2 that actually involve Ben Reilly. There are 2 Ben stories, and then there is a Black Cat story and a Venom story. The Venom story and Black Cat story, I personally didn't feel like covering. I'm selfish. So I just wanted to cover the Ben Reilly ones for obvious reasons. So the 2 stories are going to be A Matter of Faith and Merry Christmas, Mr. Storm. And I guess we will we'll start with A Matter of Faith. This was written by Glenn Greenberg, who was famously a giant part of the Life of Reilly blog that was going to be turned into a book, but unfortunately never was. He was an editor at the time of the Clone Saga, so he was there for meetings and had some insider info and helped a lot with Life of Reilly, which is super cool. Pencils are by Kevin Maguire, and the inks are by the legendary Jimmy Palmiotti, who also did some other Ben Reilly work at this time. There were a couple different inkers that were kind of rotating on Spectacular after Bill Sienkiewicz left, and Palmiotti was one of them. So I do like the issues that he inked a lot. He also inked, I said Spectacular, but he did some of the Scarlet Spider Month books too. So let's get into the recap for A Matter of Faith. Christmas Eve, one of the most magical times of the holiday season. Unfortunately for one couple, some last-minute shopping has led to an attempted mugging. Fortunately for them, though, Spider-Man is there to save the day. After cracking some quips and making quick work of the thugs, Ben Reilly retrieves the presents for the old couple and sends them on their way. They wish happy holidays to Spidey and his loved ones, which causes Ben to reflect on the lack of family or friends he has at the moment. Aunt May is gone, and he's not even able to touch base with old friends from his life as Peter Parker, now that he's officially Ben Reilly. His internal struggle is interrupted by the sight of a woman jumping from a bridge. He shakes himself of his self-pity and jumps to the rescue. Unbeknownst to him, this young woman didn't want to be saved. Her name is Jenny Sheridan, and she's lost it all. No job, no money, and the final straw, being evicted from her apartment, has caused her to be pushed over the edge, literally. Ben understands exactly how she feels, as when he first thought he was the clone, he was also completely alone, with nothing or nobody to rely on. He takes her to the ground, since he has a bad history with girls on bridges, when Jenny shares her failed dream of becoming a writer that led her to losing her will to live. Ben tells her that there are always people who will care for her, including him. As they touch their feet to the ground, Ben hears a scuffle at the Manhattan Mall. It's a D-lister named Scorcher, who's spidey-faced in untold tales. Ben tries to make the fight quick, but Scorcher burns through Ben's webs and threatens the life of a homeless man. This, of course, puts Ben Reilly, defender of the homeless, over the edge. Jenny tackles the homeless man out of the way of Scorcher's attack, as Ben webs up his own hands and lunges at Scorcher, beating him down. Ben tells Jenny that her saving the man was incredible, and she realizes that maybe she can make a difference after all. She decides to take the man to the homeless shelter and also volunteer there for the night. Ben reassures her of her idea and tells her she's made her life count for something, despite her doubts. Wishing her a Merry Christmas, he webs off to find more Christmas crime. And there was your quick recap for this short story. I will say, the art here is really, really great. I don't know a whole lot about Kevin Maguire, really. I know he has this one pretty famous recent cover that he did, but I really enjoy the art here. The way that he draws Ben and just people in general is really nice. He fits in really well with like the style of the artists that were working on the Spider titles at the time. He also draws the suit just like Jurgens does, with the like radial webbing instead of it being straight, which is super cool. Whenever people do that for the sensational suit, which I guess everyone just calls it the sensational suit, whenever someone draws that radial webbing, it's just super cool. It seems like people were kind of trying to in the beginning, maybe in some of like the promotional stuff, and then they just gave up because it was probably too much of a like a mental thing, and they couldn't just draw straight lines and get over it. But the writing here by Glenn Greenberg is really great too. I find myself that whenever a book is written by Greenberg, it's something that I really enjoy. He also wrote the Osborne Journals, which is a clusterfuck, but is impressively so. The story of Jenny is something that many people can relate to, especially around the holiday times with, like seasonal depression and whatnot. Using Ben's experience to speak to her was great, and he can relate to any of the readers who have also felt like their life is in a rut where it doesn't matter. This whole story to me just represents Ben Reilly perfectly, as he's someone who learns from his own trauma and loss and makes the most out of every moment, and also encourages others to do the same. It's a classic like feel-good holiday story, especially for a book like this. In a lot of like holiday movies, there's always like that whole sadness arc that turns into a happy arc, and this is no stranger to that, because it is quite literally the same. The colors here as well, going back to the art for a second, the colors are super vibrant. I always find it really impressive when an artist, like an art team, can handle snowy scenes really well. Snowing and rain are two things in comics that if it looks great, it looks great, and if it doesn't, it kind of falls short. I really am impressed with the way that everything was pulled off here, and the colors especially are so bright, so vibrant. I love the way that Ben is colored here too, the suit specifically. You had certain colorists during the time on Ben where they would either do a lot of blue with black shading, or they do a lot of black with blue shading. And this is one of those cases where they do a lot of black with blue shading, which to some people is their preferred way the Ben looks. I can go either way. I like the blue or the black, but there's something about when the black base with the blue shading is like pulled off really well that is super impressive, and I think it is done really well here. It just looks beautiful. It looks like Jurgens, like not exactly like him, but I can tell that it's really trying to kind of like mimic his style, which I'm perfectly okay with, because I really love Dan Jurgens' style on Sensational Spider-Man. I am not opposed to more of that. That is for sure. That's really all I have to say about this specifically. It's like I said, a really nice, like heartwarming Christmas story. It's short and sweet. There's nothing that is super complex about it. It's the story of Jenny, the story of Ben, them meeting, and Ben encouraging her to not give up on life, which is just a beautiful thing that I think everybody needs to hear at some point in their life, or multiple times throughout their life. So, Merry Christmas, Mr. Storm is a little bit different of a story. It kind of flip flops back and forth between past and present. And I feel like this is the story that people remember the most out of this book. Anytime I talk to someone about the holiday special, they're always like, oh, that's the one with Johnny Storm, right? And it absolutely is. He gets his own story. And it's a good story. This one was written by Sholly Fish, I believe that's how that's pronounced, with pencils by Josh Hood and Robert Brown. And to be completely honest with you, I cannot tell where the art switches. I've looked through this book a couple times and it just looks streamlined to me. So I don't know. If someone knows what pages are what specifically, let me know. With inks by the legendary Al Williamson, who is one of the great inkers and artists of comics. He's worked with John Romita Jr. and many, many others. And even on like Spider-Man at the time, he was one of the two. Him and Al Milgrom were kind of like flip-flopping inking John Romita Jr. So it's cool that he's on this as well. All right, let's get into the recap for it, shall we? Atop the Statue of Liberty on Christmas morning, Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four waits for his old pal Spidey. Apparently, Spidey's running late, so Johnny makes a spider symbol to get his attention. Johnny remarks that this is a lot different from last year and enters flashback mode. Christmas morning last year, it was Johnny who was running late, with Pete waiting for him at their spot on Lady Liberty. While Pete cracks some jokes, Johnny remains kind of stern. Spidey asks what's wrong, and Johnny reflects on all the insanity the past year has brought him. Being arrested, his wife was a Skrull, she was pregnant, and then she wasn't pregnant, she died, she came back and tried to kill him, Reed died, his sister turned into a psycho, among other things. Pete replies by just saying geez, which is a super appropriate response because goddamn. Johnny misses the simple times, fighting bad guys and getting into trouble, after which Peter attempts to unmask himself to Johnny to prove their friendship, but Johnny stops him. No matter what, they're friends. Johnny then gives Pete a talking Venom action figure that Toy Biz actually made, to which Pete sarcastically says that his wife will love. Peter gives Johnny a Statue of Liberty miniature with his phone number on it, just in case he ever needs to talk. Back in the present, Ben shows up confused to Lady Liberty and doesn't know what Johnny wants with him. Understanding their mutual confusion after some exchanged words, Ben goes on to explain seemingly everything, Peter being a clone, Ben being the original, etc. They both bond over hoping Peter is okay with MJ, and Johnny gives Ben a card with his number on it in case he ever needs to talk. They plan on meeting back up next year, something that will unfortunately never happen. They give their farewells as the story ends. So this one, obviously there's no action really in this story at all. There are some flashback scenes that have action in them, but there's no like current day action, which is a nice thing at a certain point, because not everything has to be fighting and action. And, you know, the new Ultimate Spider-Man has definitely proved that for those that have been reading that book. But what I love about this is just, again, an emotional story of Johnny and Peter, Johnny and Spidey, who are kind of like the Marvel friendship duo that almost everybody thinks of when they think of like superheroes that are friends. Johnny and Peter are always brought up because they have team ups together. They've always gotten along. They've always had this like butting heads thing that they do too. It's a whole thing. They're one of the great pairings of comics. And it also works to serve as a nice kind of resolution to their conflict in Amazing Spider-Man 407, because there's that whole thing with the end of Amazing 407 with Ben saying that, oh, Johnny Storm is my enemy, but Sandman is my friend. What a weird fucking life I live. What did Peter do all these 5 years? I love that. So I like that they finally have their little moment of explanation and a conclusion, and Johnny is in on the whole loop. And later in Spider-Man Team Up, they'll get to see each other again, because there's a Fantastic Four team up in that book. But the art here is actually pretty good. Josh Hood, we have talked about before on the show. He did Sensational Spider-Man number 12 as a fill-in. We kind of like laid it into him in that episode. But his art here, I don't mind. There's not a whole lot to really mess up about this story, to be completely honest. So it's so short that you almost don't really think about it. The one thing that I love is the way that he draws Spider-Man and Spider-Man's eyes. I'm pretty sure we mentioned that in the Sensational 12 episode, but the way he draws Spider-Man is really great. It's just kind of his, like, Johnny's face here is a little weird to me. But overall, definitely really great art. And again, the colors here are really nice. I wish we got to see Josh Hood draw more of Ben Reilly as Spider-Man. He drew him here, and then I think he drew him in one of the later issues of Green Goblin that he did, which I have never read that series. I've just kind of skimmed through it to see some things, and it's on the docket. It's always on the docket. But I love the chemistry here between both Spider-Men and Johnny. The whole Johnny venting to Peter thing, and Peter feeling sorry that he's never really told Johnny who he was, but Johnny saying it doesn't matter. That's something great, and something that is pretty much sort of like gone back on in 24/7, the Dan Slott story. It's a whole conflict in that, which I think is funny, but it's a little bit different then. I like that Johnny gives Peter the Venom figure. I think that's great. And the fact that Peter's like, oh, great, MJ will love this. She loves Venom. She's not traumatized or anything. And the whole, like, in case you need to talk thing it's just it's so nice. It feels good to read it. And I love when both of the Spider-Men are swinging away at like the end of their segments. It's so dynamic. Josh Hood did great on those poses. One coloring mistake, though, I will bring up. I said the colors were good, but Ben Reilly has gold web shooters here. It's really strange, and it's not like a one-time thing. Every time he's in the book for the what, 2, 3, 4 panels that he's there, his web shooters are gold, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it's not right. That's for sure. Uh, But yeah, overall, two just really nice, great Christmas one-off stories. One is the one with and heartwarm, and then the other one is just a tale of two friends. It's nice to have both in the same book to kind of balance each other out, as well as the Black Cat and Venom stories, that just so you can get a whole rounded sort of experience with the book. And the back of the book honestly kind of says it great, where it makes the perfect superhero stocking stuffer. All new Yuletide tales starring Spidey and some of his most popular friends and foes. And I like that it says showcasing the work of some of the most talented creators in comics. And I don't know who really any of the people are that work on this book, except for Josh Hood. But I know them because of this book, and I think that's a whole other sort of testament to their work. The fact that every year I want to go back and read this to see Kevin Maguire's art and read Glenn Greenberg's words is great, because out of the two, I think I definitely prefer A Matter of Faith. It's just the one that I resonate with more. Merry Christmas, Mr. Storm is a good story, but the fact that it's like 10 pages, and it's if you really love Johnny Storm, then obviously you're going to kind of gravitate towards that one. And if you really enjoyed their relationship together, you're going to prefer that one. But I think as a Spider-Man story as a whole, I like A Matter of Faith more. Just, I don't know, personal preference, I guess. Overall, I love them both, though. They're both really great stories. If I had to give a number to them, I'd probably say that A Matter of Faith is like a 9 out of 10, which is really high. That might be the highest thing I've said on this podcast. And Merry Christmas, Mr. Storm would probably be like an 8. So, like I said, they're not far off. I really do love both of these stories. Just an overall really fun Christmas time adventure. Speaking of Christmas, what are you guys doing for Christmas? Feel free to let me know if you're looking forward to anything this Christmas. I'm really looking forward to spending time with friends. I get to hang out with a bunch of them next week. That's for my birthday, but since my birthday's around Christmas, it's all the same. really looking forward to just hanging out. And I'm not a big holiday person, to be completely transparent, but there is something about Christmas that's nice. I love the smells and I love the cold, so that's always nice too. Uh, but yeah, let me know what you're looking forward to. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to the Ultimate Spider-Man Christmas issue 12, uh, which I think comes out next week. I don't know. I could be wrong. It doesn't matter because I'm uploading this separate from when I'm recording anyway. But if you have anything to say to me, feel free to reach out. As always, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and everything at Bachirimiro. Feel free to check out the Scarlet Archive. Since we're talking about Ben Reilly, it's completely relevant this time. An archive of all things Ben Reilly and Clone Saga. That is in all of my links in my bio. And let me know what you think of Spider-Man Holiday Special 1995. Is this one that you go back to every year? Because it's one that I do. And I'll catch you next time with Matthew for the Savage Land.